So now we want to create our product card component, which is going to replace this div with just the name. So let's create that, but first we're going to install the shadcn card UI component because that's what we'll be using. So let's say npx shadcn at latest and add card. Okay, and then what we'll do, okay, so I actually already have it installed, so I'm just going to, yeah, there we go. All right, so now that that's set up, let's create our product card. So in the components shared product folder, we're going to create a new file called product-card.tsx. And let's say sfc product card. Now, as far as what we want this to take in, it's going to just take the product. So let's say product, and again, for now, I'm going to set the product type to any, but we'll change that later on when we get more into TypeScript and creating types. Now, I do want to just import the link component and the image component from Next. And then in the return, we're going to have the card component, and I'm going to import that from components UI card. So just make sure that that gets imported at the top. And then I'm just going to add a class name of width-full and max-width-small. Okay, so inside the card will be the header and the content. So let's say card header. Again, make sure that gets imported. And as far as classes, it's just going to be the padding 0 and items dash center. Okay, now in the header, we're going to have the image, but we're going to have a link around the image as well. So let's add the link, and it's going to go to the product page. So it's going to be backtick/product/ and then we want the slug. So product.slug, and that's going to wrap the image. So image and the source of the image. Now, remember, it's an array called images, so we're going to set this to product.images, and then we'll take the first one, which would be the 0 index. And then let's also add the alt. I'll set that to just the product name. And then I'm going to add a height of, let's do 300, and also a width of 300. And let's set the priority to true. Okay, now we have some other stuff to add here, but just for now, I'm going to bring it into the product list component so that we can see it. So let's import product card, and we're going to replace this div right here with product card. And let's pass in a key. Since this is a list, React requires us to have a key, a unique key, which I'm going to set to the product slug. And then for the product, we're going to pass in the product. All right, so let's save that, and now we should just see the images, and if I click it, it takes us to the page, which of course doesn't exist yet. Now we want some stuff under it, so let's go back to the product card, and under the header, we're going to add the card content, and let's see, do we need, yeah, let's set, for class name, let's do padding 4. We're also going to make it a grid with a gap of 4. And then in the card content, we're going to have the brand. It's going to have a class of text extra small. And let's add the product.brand. So if I save that, we should now see the brand in small letters. And then underneath that, we'll have a link, another link to the product page. So href, set that to backtick/product/ and then the slug. So product.slug. And that's going to wrap an h2. And that h2 is going to have a class of text small as well as font-medium. And that's going to be product.name. Okay, save that. There we go. Now we're going to have, if we look at this, we're going to have the ratings and the price. Now, we're not going to do the stars just yet. That'll be later on. This will be a separate component with some SVGs. But for now, we'll just say like whatever, 4.5 rating or 4.5 stars. And then the price, right now, it's not going to display like this with a small float. We're going to do that in the next video. I just want to get the basic price displayed. So underneath the link, let's create a div. We'll say flex-between and gap-4. And I'm going to have just a paragraph with the rating. So we'll say product.rating, and then after that, we'll just say stars. So right now, it's just going to look like this, where it says, 4.2 stars, but we'll change it later on. And then we want to show the price, but we first want to make sure it's in stock. If it's not in stock, then we want to show out of stock. So let's say product, we're going to do a ternary here with product.stock. If that is greater than 0, then parentheses, else, parentheses. And if it is greater than 0, then let's do a paragraph with the class of font-bold. And we're just going to put the price in here. So product product.price, and then if it's not in stock, then we're going to have a paragraph with the class of text-destructive, which is a red text, and we're just going to say out of stock. Yeah, out of stock. Okay, and you can see this one is out of stock, and then the rest just have the price. So our price at the moment looks like this, but we want it to look like this, okay? And also I'm going to make it so, like, if it's 90, it actually says 90 instead of just 9. So we're going to create a separate component for that. So in components shared product, let's create a new file called product-price.tsx. And we'll add in here product price. And as far as what that's going to take in, it'll take in a value. And I'm also going to have it take in an optional class name if you want to add in a class to it. And then as far as the types for that, for those props, we have value, which is going to be a number, and then we have class name, which is going to be optional, so I'm going to put a question mark, and that'll be string. Now, a couple things I want to do above the return. One is we want to ensure, let's say ensure 2 decimal places. So I'm going to create a variable called string value, and we're going to set that to the value, and we're going to use .toFixed, which allows us to specify how many decimal places we want, and we want 2. Next, I want to get the int and the float, because we're going to get a price like this, and we want to split it so that we get this value, which is the int value, and this value, which is the float value. And we can do that by using split. So let's take the string value, and let's use split, and we want to split it at the dot, at the period. And what we can do is destructure with brackets, and we can simply say the int value, or whatever you want to call this, I'm just calling it int value, and then float value. So that will take this number, put it in int value, and this number, and put it in float value. So now we have those, and we can display them differently. Now, as far as the return goes, we're going to have let's do a paragraph, and for the class name, I want this to be dynamic, where it's always going to have a class of text 2XL, but if we pass in a class name prop, then I want to use that as well. And to do that, we can import a special utility function called cn, and that's in your libutils folder. So right here, libutils. This cn function is used for dynamic classes. So we can set the class name to, let's say, cn, and the first argument is going to be whatever static classes we want, which in this case, I just want it to be 2XL, text 2XL, and then we can also pass in class name if there is one, right? So that'll get applied if we pass a class in. And then in the paragraph, we're going to have the dollar sign is going to be smaller and up top. Same thing with the float. The int will be big. So for the dollar sign, let's do a span, and we're going to give it a class or 2 classes, text XS, that'll make it smaller, and then let's do align dash super, that'll push it up. And we'll put the money sign. And then I'm going to copy this down because we want to do the same thing with the float value. I'm also going to put a dot in front of it. So we'll say dot and then our float value. Okay, if I save that, we should just see the float. Well, actually, we didn't bring it in yet. So in product card, let's import, let's say product, we want product price, and then we're going to replace this paragraph with product price, and we're going to pass in the value. Now that it takes in a number, so we're just going to use number and then pass product.price. Okay, save that, and now we see the money sign and we see the float. So now in the middle, we just want to put the int value. Save it, and there we go. And like I said, if we want to pass in a class, like let's say I want to do class name, and let's say I want to make it red, I could say text-red-500, save it, and now that gets applied. Okay, I don't want to do that, but I just wanted to make it possible. All right, so yeah, I think that we're ready now to jump into the database. We want to set up our Postgres, we want to set up Prisma, we're going to talk about schemas and migrations and all types of stuff. So we'll get into that in the next section.